Happy Sunday, everyone. This is Screenwriter Randall Rydell Russell. I'm bringing you the second part of the process when I break down screenplays and give you tips, tools, and just my inspirations for being a screenwriter and things of that nature. So today we're going to be going into favorite screenwriters like we always do. Today's screenwriter is none other than one of my absolute favorites, Frank Darabont. Okay, so Frank Darabont was born in France in a refugee camp, and his family fled to the States, I believe in the early 60s. He was born in 1959. He was always interested in writing and books and things of that nature. And then he ended up getting really interested in wanting to be in the movie business after he saw George Lucas's THX 1138. The feature-length version of the short film that Lucas did when he was in college. So that just kind of grabbed him into wanting to do that. And he was a vivacious reader, really obsessed with Stephen King's novels. But we'll get into that later. He started off as a production assistant. He worked on the movie Hell Night with Linda Blair, the movie The Seduction, and I believe the other one Trancers. And I love Trancers. Trancers is that full moon, Charles Band, just really cheaply made but big scale type of movie. But he's a production assistant on that too, so that really helped him. He also started his career and blew up after meeting Chuck Russell. Frank Darabont had written a script for an episode of MASH that Chuck Russell had read and liked. Chuck Russell had just gotten done doing writing on the movie Dreamscape, which is another kind of like a horror action sci-fi movie that came out in the 80s with Dennis Quaid, which if you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. Chuck Russell really liked Frank Darabont's writing, so they started a partnership in the 80s, and I don't believe they really write together anymore, not that they're not friends, but they did a lot of stuff in the 80s and the early 90s that kind of blew up. Right now, we're going to go over the top 5 favorite scripts that Frank Darabont ever wrote, in my opinion, and some of my favorite movies. So, number 1, as everybody should know, is also considered the greatest movie of all time on IMDb. That's none other than The Shawshank Redemption. This film it's perfect. It's just one of those movies that everything about it just works. The acting, the story, the direction, the color, the music, the ending, everything about this movie is fantastic. And Frank Darabont had to adapt that novella, Rita Hayworth on The Shawshank Redemption, written by Stephen King, and get it to where it's at. And the fact this movie won no Oscars, I'm still shaking my head at the Academy, but Shawshank Redemption. Number 2, also written by Stephen King, and also an adaptation of a prison novel, The Green Mile. This movie it's very good, it's powerful, but it doesn't have the same feel that Shawshank has. It doesn't take from the movie at all, but the writing, obviously Frank Darabont adapted that very well. He wrote it with himself, really, and he just got where he needed to be, and that's what makes this such a good movie. And Michael Clarke Duncan as John Coffey is just, rest in peace, Michael Clarke Duncan. Just really heartbreaking performance, especially the end. But yeah, Green Mile, this is definitely number 2 on my Frank Darabont list. Number 3 just so happens to be one of my favorite horror movies, one of my favorite films of all time, and to me, the best film in this said series that I'm about to speak about. That is none other than Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. You're gonna get mad when I say this. I think this is better than the first one. It's literally the best in the entire series. One is such a good movie, but the end, I'm not a big fan of the end. It kind of just, it's over. I know your secret now. Freddy vanishes. Oh, look, Johnny Depp and Nick Corey and Amanda Wyss are still alive. Let's drive. Oh, wait, the car's Freddy Krueger. Mother. And then he pulls that, obviously, blown up doll through the door. it just was kind of cheesy, almost like they didn't know what to do. This one, on the other hand, it's just very imaginative. I love the cast of kids. The story, it's very scary too. Also want to point out, this is the first movie in history that has a black character survive a horror movie and move on to the sequel. But they kill him the first 20 minutes of the next one, so it's like, whatever. But this movie, so Chuck Russell wrote this with Frank Darabont, and Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner wrote on it as well. So it's just all these ideas put together. And if you remember the movie Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, that movie and Dreamscape, if you watch those two movies and then watch this movie and just read the stories that Winsor McKay did about Little Nemo, there's so much of that in this, just made it like a horror movie. So definitely right there. Number 4 is, I honestly think it's an underrated 80s horror movie, and I think it's fantastic because of the acting in it and the story, and just it's fun, it's camp. The Blob. This was directed by Chuck Russell and written by Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell. Kevin Dillon, who played Drama on Entourage, and Shawnee Smith, who is Amanda in all the Saw movies. They really carry this movie. Jeffrey Damone, who's another Frank Darabont mainstay, who's in a lot of his stuff. Yeah, this movie is so much fun. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it and pick it up whenever you see it. Final film on the list, another Stephen King adaptation. Like I said, he's a big Stephen King fan, so but I want to go ahead and just say The Mist. Don't get this confused with The Fog. 2 different movies, 2 different scenarios going on. One's Mist and one's Fog, let's just say that. But this movie, so crazy and imaginative and just so Lovecraftian in so many ways, with the different dimensions and the creatures coming out. But one of the most brutal endings I've ever seen in a horror movie. I remember me and my brother watched this the first time, having a couple drinks, just having a good time watching. At the end, we're just like, and then a flipping second later, the army came and all the monsters were going away. If he had just waited just a little bit. So, yeah, this fantastic film. Frank Darabont also was one of the most sought after script doctors in the 90s. He wrote on The Rocketeer. He wrote on Copycat. He wrote on The Fan. He wrote on Eraser. He wrote the D-Day sequence in Saving Private Ryan. The Majestic, not a great movie, but you know, he did direct that as well. He wrote on Minority Report. The Salton Sea, which is a very, very, very good underrated Val Kilmer movie. Salton Sea, don't forget that one. Collateral, he wrote a draft of Collateral, and I love Collateral. Law Abiding Citizen, and the Godzilla from 2014. He also developed The Walking Dead, as we all know. The first 2 seasons of Walking Dead are fantastic, and he got fired, I believe, midway through season 2 or at the end of season 2. Originally, it was because they said that he wasn't good at adapting television or something like that, but it ended up being that the cost was too much. So they decided to just get rid of him and bring somebody else in, and he sued them and got like $200 million. He was also supposed to write Mission Impossible 3 when David Fincher was going to direct Mission Impossible 3. He dropped out and Joe Carnahan came on. Joe Carnahan revised some of Frank Darabont's script, but then he left the project, and then J.J. Abrams came on. That became J.J. Abrams' first directorial debut for a theatrical film. And then he brought on Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman, and then Frank Darabont kind of just walked away after that. He also was working with Steven Spielberg on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I believe his draft was a little different, but Spielberg loved his draft of it but George Lucas did not. So George Lucas rewrote the whole thing, decided not to use Frank Darabont's draft, and Spielberg chose to go with Lucas because that's his boy. And David Koepp came on, and Jeff Nathanson to rewrite the script. And Frank Darabont kind of, he was pissed off after that. Frank Darabont, I don't know if he's an asshole in real life or whatever it might be, but he's gotten the shit in the stick for a lot of movie projects, and but he's so good at writing. You already saw what I listed as the things he wrote uncredited that we don't even know about. So yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I'm mad that he hasn't really written anything in a long time that was in the theater that just says like written by Frank Darabont, but I don't think he's hurting money wise because he wrote Shawshank Redemption and a bunch of other stuff, and obviously Walking Dead. But I would love to see him get behind the camera again, directing something that he wrote, or just writing screenplays again, like all the time, because he still has it. It's like riding a bike. You pick it up and you just keep going. So that concludes part 2 of the process. I want to say thank you to everybody for continuing to watch and view. Share it with everybody you can. Watch more Frank Darabont stuff, and I will see you next time.